Okay, welcome everyone, and thank you so much for attending 24 Hours of PaaS Summit Preview Edition. We're very excited you could join us here today for Julie Koesmarno's session, I Want It Now, Data Visualization with Power View. This event consists of 24 consecutive live webcasts, and if you haven't been able to watch all the webcasts live, they are being recorded and will be posted online soon after the event. My name is Catherine Wilhelmsen. I'm a board member of SQL Server User Group Norway and one of the organizers of SQL Saturday Oslo. I'll just go through a couple of quick introduction slides here before Julie takes over. She will speak for about 40 to 45 minutes and then we'll move on to the Q&A. Next slide, please. If you need any technical assistance during this session, please just use the question pane on the right side of your screen. And also remember to maximize your screen with the Zoom button on the top of the presentation window. Feel free to ask any questions during the session, and I will read them out loud for Julie to answer in the Q&A at the end of the webcast. You will get a feedback form after the session is over with just a couple of questions, and please take a minute to complete it. Your feedback is very important to us and to Julie. Next slide. We also want to say a huge thank you to our sponsors and event partners, Microsoft and Dell Software, for making this event possible. Without their support, we wouldn't have been able to do these free events. So thank you, Microsoft and Dell. Next slide. As you probably know, this 24 Hours of PaaS event is the Summit Preview Edition. PaaS Summit is the event for SQL Server professionals. It has over 190 technical sessions, and there's a unique opportunity to network with over 5,000 attendees from all over the world. This year, PaaS Summit is held in Seattle from November 4th to November 7th, and if you use the discount code you can see on the screen, 24HOP14, you can save $200 on your registration. And trust me, PaaS Summit is worth every dollar. Next slide. I would like to introduce you to the speaker of the hour. Julie Koesmarno is an MVP and outstanding volunteer in the SQL Server community. And you can find her on Twitter as MissSQLGirl.com, and you can also follow her blog, MissSQLGirl.com. I'm sure we all want it now. It's the session title. So Julie, please take it away.
Thanks, Catherine, for the lovely introduction. Let me see if I could advance the slide. There we go. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining 24 Hours of PaaS. And this is probably your 20th session, or maybe not, but I'll like to thank you anyway for joining this hour with me. So the presentation today is I Want It Now, Data Visualization with Power View. So as Catherine has introduced me, my name is Julie Koesmarno. I'm actually based in Australia. It's quite a nice day from where I am right now, so hopefully you're enjoying your last few hours with 24 Hours of PaaS. So let's get started with I Want It Now, Data Visualization with Power View. I won't bother you with reading everything on the screen right now, but I just want to highlight a few things. So these are what I'm showing you right now is pretty much my abstract that you can see from 24 Hours of PaaS website or PaaS Summit website, saying that this is the preview of PaaS Summit. Now, I just want to highlight a few things. Just to start with, this is actually an introductory level, and it's a level 100. So if you're new to data visualization or new to reporting or using Power View, new to Power View as well, then this is a good session for you. And the idea behind this talk is pretty much around my experience when I talk to the business, when I talk to the management people. I often ask them, how soon do you want questions related to your, related to the analysis want to be answered by? And pretty much they say, I want it now, because they think that they have the data, and then they usually know the questions, the important questions that they want to get answered. And when I ask them, when do you want this? And they usually say, I want it now. So I'm hoping in this session that you would be able to take away 3 components: design component, technical component, as well as business component, and to integrate this all together and become unsung heroes in order to present good data visualization and using Power View as well. All right, so let's start with 4 major things, or 4 things in the session today. So we'll start with data visualization, we'll talk about dashboarding, and we'll talk about how to use Power View to do data visualization or to present dashboards. And I'll show you some tips about preparing the data model as well. Now, because this is a cut-down version of the past summit session, I'm not going to be able to show you everything that will be at the session because it's much shorter. And I'm hoping that at the past summit session, I would be able to show you some gadgets where you can actually see Power View quite nicely, but I won't be able to do that today, unfortunately. Anyway, so let's start with data visualization. Well, what is data visualization? To me, when I start thinking about data visualization, it's all about abstracting and communicating data. And it could be the data that you have in your organization might be stored in database or whatever it is, but it's probably unorganized, not unstructured, a bit disorganized, and you need to structure it in such a way or organize it in such a way that it is more in the intuitive and comprehensible format via visualization. And you're probably wondering, why visual? Well, let's step back for a bit and think about probably biology and the science bits here. 70% of our sense receptors is actually dedicated to vision. So that's one thing to remember there. And if you look back when you start learning new concepts since you're young or little, you'd probably try to start picking up patterns. So you remember the old concept from before, and then you start seeking patterns and then how to apply these patterns to what you have learned before. So we do that a lot constantly, and in fact our eyes are always keep tracking on things around us. And not everything is consumed. We only consume a very, very small portion of it. And visualization is actually the most effective way of seeking patterns. Now, the eye and visual cortex of brain works like massively parallel processor to provide the highest bandwidth channel into the human cognitive centers. So all that seems to be pretty long to say, but essentially what I want to get across here is the fact that seeing is extremely fast and efficient, and thinking is much slower and less efficient. So if I have to kind of visualize what the brain looks like and how much work the seeing versus the thinking has to do, well, the seeing is actually underused and the thinking is overused. And remember that seeing is actually much faster and thinking is much slower. And a lot of the time when we produce reports, when it's like in tabular format or whatever it is, there are lots of numbers, there are lots of text on the screen, and it's really hard it's harder for the brain to consume. When things are not summarized in certain ways, it's just, and we have to scan through a lot of things, it's much harder to understand what we have at hand. So using data visualization techniques, we want to be able to do this. So we shift the seeing a lot more and the thinking a lot less. So essentially we're kind of trying to make it a little bit more in balance for the brain to work. So we want to do more seeing, which is faster, and we want to do less thinking, which is the slower part of the brain. And you're probably wondering how would visualization can take advantage of that? How do we make sure that we can do that? Now, one thing to remember with besides visualization, one thing to remember is short-term memory. Like we store information in our short-term memory. So you're probably thinking about RAM and things like that now, but I won't go to that much detail around that area. But I would like you to see this, where when we're presented with new things, we can only capture probably around 3 to 9 new ideas or concepts. It might not be the first 3 that you would remember or the first 5, but it's just like 3 out of however many that we usually can remember quite well, and then it gradually probably reduce when you get to the 5th and beyond. So one thing to remember is when you do actually want to present some information, you want to just limit it to probably around 5 if you can on one screen, and then perhaps if you need to then move on to the next screen to tell the continual story. But somehow when you create this dashboard or visualization or reporting, you need to make sure that everything ties together into a nice story so that it's easier for us to remember and take away the key points from the reports or from the dashboards or from any data visualization. All right, so imagine you get to see this. If I ask you right now to count how many objects and how many object types we have on the screen, you're probably going to be counting with your fingers, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And if you're like me, I'm a little bit clumsy. Sometimes I have to go back. Oh, did I count that one? Do I have to recount it again? It's like, man, it's such a hard job to do. But imagine if I had organized this objects into specific ways. It's now easier to say I've got 3 object types and I've got 5 in each object type, so in total I have 15. So that's easy, right? So this is kind of a way of seeing your data as well. A lot of the time in your organization, you have your data in such an unorganized way or disorganized way, and if you summarize it, structure it in a specific way, or visualize it in a specific way, it's easier for the business to understand what's going on and what actions they need to do. Now moving on, this is another sort of objects that kind of scattered on the screen. At the moment it looks a little bit, what's going on here? I'm not really seeing anything. But if I just give a little bit of an aid, hopefully you can see the thin gray line here that is actually going upward to the right corner. You would see that, it starts forming a pattern where it's going upwards. And without me pointing anything, you could see 2 outliers. One is the triangle, which is towards the center, on the top center. And you would also see a blue one on the bottom right. So I don't actually have to circle them, but you would see that they're outliers. So again, this is our way of kind of picking patterns and using things that would aid us to summarize and highlight anomalies, and you want to do that as well when you do reporting or data visualization in your daily basis. Now I've just shown you a little bit around visually encoding data, how we can take advantage of pre-attentive processing, by organizing things in certain ways, and then, bam, the thinking part of the brain just comes up with the, 15 objects, 3 object types like I've shown you before. And then I'm using color, form, and spatial position, and to show you some patterns or to summarize some information there as well. Now, this, by the way, a lot of my talk here is actually based on Stephen View's book called Information Dashboard Design. I would highly recommend you to spend some time to actually really sit down and read. He's got a lot of good books, like Show Me the Numbers is a good one as well. Most of his books are actually in paper format, and I would say that it's best done that way because he lays it out in such a way that it's much easier to read and to consume the information. Anyway, so this is another one that, just Law Principles is another one that he highlights in his book, where it's just pretty much using several principles to summarize and highlight things as well. So the first one is proximity. Over here we can actually see 3 rows of things or 3 rows of objects or circles. That's just because the way the objects are laid out. And then we also use the object types, object colors, or object forms to highlight similarity, like you see here. And we also use like the gray, the top row, the gray one, the gray shadow, and the outline on the bottom to show enclosure. It just groups objects differently. And then we also use boxes or boxes or circles to enclose things, and it doesn't have to be like properly closed, but you can see that it's being grouped together using box and circles, even though they're not fully closed box or closed circle. And the next one is continuity. We can see that it's a single line, even though actually it's broken up into probably about 3 lines here. And yeah, so it doesn't have to be a continuous thing. It can be broken, but our eyes just track it as one thing. And we also use lines to connect things together, to group things together, and that's the connection principle there, or connection part of the Gestalt principles. So I would highly recommend you to read his book and go to this website here. It's got quite a lot of interesting information around visual perception and data visualization as well. All right, so let's move on to dashboard. So dashboard is a type of data visualization, and taken from Stephen Few's book, this is the definition, where its dashboard is visual display of the most important information needed to achieve one or more objectives, which fits entirely on a single computer screen, so it can be monitored at a glance. When I was reading this, it's like, wow, I cannot reduce or take anything out of this definition at all, because dashboard is just exactly that. So whenever you design dashboard from now on, please, 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 if you can, always think or go back to this definition. Does it actually fit this definition? Now, an interesting sort of side story here. I do fly quite a bit, and I've got this Qantas, which is an airline here in Australia. I've got this Qantas Windows app that I use quite a bit because I want to know, when is the check-in time, when is the boarding time, how far away am I from the airport, just so that I can maximize my boarding experience or checking in experience. So to me, that app is actually a good dashboard because everything actually fits on my Windows Phone screen. So if I have to change this definition of dashboard, I would probably say instead of fitting entirely on a single screen, I would change it to on a single digital screen, because these days you know that a lot of people have more than one gadgets. You have mobile phone, you have tablets, you have PC, you have laptops, and there are so many different types of digital gadgets out there that you would use to monitor or to inform you or to let you enjoy your best experience on day-to-day life. So another rule about dashboard, it has to be small, concise, clean, and intuitive display mechanisms, and also customizable, specific to requirements. So after looking at sort of these requirements or this set of rules about dashboards, I was thinking, Power View is actually a really good tool for dashboarding, because it can be shown on a small screen, and it is concise, it is clean, and you can interact with it. And in most cases, not all cases, in most cases, it's customizable, specific to requirements. And one thing that you have to remember is that Power View is part of Power BI as well, and that means that the offering is available on the cloud. So that allows the Power BI team, the Microsoft team, to be able to release new features more frequently than if you have it on premise. Now that might change in the future, but I'm not quite sure. But I have seen a lot of new features being pushed through to Power BI components quite frequently, nearly every month now. So hopefully the Power View new features will come very soon. All right, so one thing that I want to get across here is that it is very important and it is very tricky to get data visualization right. Don't get me wrong, it's really, really tricky. Sometimes if once I have done a report or a dashboard using Power View or anything in general, I would have to go back to it again. Does it actually really fit that requirement? Does it actually answer the questions? Does the business have to actually, do more research, or would they get what they want from just looking at this one screen? So it is very tricky. It's not that easy. But it's so powerful when you get it right. So it is a journey worth traveling. Hopefully you'll find it that way, because I do find it that way. So there are several dashboard roles out there, and I want you to remember this role so that you can actually build good dashboards. You need to make sure that your dashboard actually summarizes the information, identifies patterns, highlights anomalies, suggests reason, and guides towards effective decisions. If your dashboards can do this, it's pretty good. It's sweet. So that's the sweet spot that you want to get. So make sure again in your checklist that you have this, that your dashboard does all these things here. There are three purposes of dashboards. One is strategic. So imagine the business wants to know whether it's worthwhile expanding in the current city, or is it worthwhile expanding in another country, or is it worthwhile to introducing a new product line. So that's more in the strategic sort of side of dashboard's purpose. The information might not have to be updated every single day, but when they want it, it has to be up to date. So if you're coming from more in the heavy backend data processing, just remember that that it would actually help the data analysts and the data visualization gurus out there to be able to produce good strategic dashboards if you have the most up-to-date data. Another purpose of dashboard is analytical. So this is where perhaps the management wants to go, wants to look at, like for example, if they want to buy a new set of product to sell, would that actually affect the existing product lines, and how much it would affect? And then if it's sort of looking at the what if sort of scenarios, and also for example, if the web traffic is actually down and it does affect revenue, what can we do? What is the cost of that? Can we actually call certain people to get this sorted as soon as possible? And sometimes this might be to do with SLA as well. And actually talking about SLA, operational is also another purpose of dashboard where management would use it for example, all right, so we have a list of things to do today to call up people. Who are these people that we need to call up? How come the volume is actually higher today than yesterday in terms of chasing debt and all that stuff? Or how much inventory do we have to top up today compared to tomorrow or compared to the date before, and things like that. So operational and analytical dashboards usually tend to be on the more frequent basis, operational being maybe on around the daily sort of frequency, whereas analytical could be on the daily or weekly sort of frequency. But it just really depends on your business requirements. I'm just sort of generalizing quite a few things here. Now, dashboards or data visualization in general, they can come in several different mediums. The most popular one, and has been around for quite some time, is actually paper format. So it's very hard to distribute in a way, and it's hard to archive too, and it's also static. So if you have more information coming in, then whatever that you have in front of you might be out of date. And paper also have different types, different sizes. One country size paper, popular or normal paper size, it might be different from another country. So that's something to be aware of. And this is just a generalization of the normal paper sizes out there. And of course, there's also different types of paper in terms of weight and the texture and all that stuff too. Nowadays, a lot of things are actually available in digital format. So here is a screenshot of Power View on Surface, which is actually rich of features. So a lot of the time, people prefer to use a digital type of dashboards or reporting because it's rich of features. They can interact with it, and it's updatable. So as soon as new information comes in, it's updatable. They can access it more freely from outside office to wherever they want to go. And most of the time, if they have internet connection, they can do that. They can look at the dashboards. But with all the great parts of digital visualization or digital screens, we do have this enormous amount of different sizes, different types of platforms or gadgets out there like iPad, Surface, Nexus, and they all have different screen resolutions as well. So, but the good thing about PowerView is that you can actually view it on normal PC or laptop, and you can view it on Surface, and I'm pretty sure it will be available in other formats as well. And there's another thing that I want to show you. This is actually a screenshot of PowerView embedded on a website. This is taken from Power BI blog, so it is out there. I'm not sure how they did it, and it's not something that we can use currently, but they have publicized this web page before, so it's quite interesting that you can actually look at it from a mobile phone. So essentially, perhaps if PowerView is more readily available or consumable on a web format for sharing with a lot of other people, then it might be doable to be able to cater for the other digital screens just other than just Surface. I mean, if you actually upload your workbook on Power BI, and if you have PowerView sheets in the workbook, you can actually view that from a website, from most of these gadgets out there, or most of laptops or mobile phones or tablets out there would be able to view this as well. But it's something to try, and it's just going to get better as well. All right, so let's talk about PowerView. Now, PowerView is actually first introduced around 2012, and it was first introduced into SharePoint 2010. So you would need to have Tabular or Power Pivot. I think I've only tried using Tabular actually to connect and to be the data model for PowerView here. So there are a few different objects or charting tools that's available in PowerView. So for example, number 1 here is showing you slicers with the image. And then number 2 here is just a tile that is grouping number 3 and 4. Number 3 is a cut style. Number 4 is just a line chart. And then number 5 is kind of like a trellis chart or multiplies. And then number 6 is a column chart, and this is something that I put together. So the one I showed you before, that was from SharePoint, and this is actually from Excel 2013. And this is something that I put together, I think around late 2012. That was from using Excel 2013. So the Excel version actually has got more features. For example, this map as shown on number 4, and we also have there's also a matrix and a few other object types that you will see from my demo a little later. Alrighty, so let's talk about the 2 different types of PowerView. The first one is Excel 2013 desktop or Power BI version of it, and which is what I'm going to demo to you today. The data model behind this is Power Pivot right now. And of course, Power Pivot can connect to most of the different types of data sources out there, so that's quite powerful. You will get more frequent upgrades or updates from the Power BI team, so that's really good. And there's also the online features in Power BI site out there. So if you sign up for Office 365, you can sign up for the Power BI features. You can enable that subscription, and that gives you the online features of PowerView, which is very cool. And I will show you, if you have time, I will show you today as well. Now, Power BI version of PowerView also supports better for collaboration. So if you're just working on PowerView on your Excel desktop, then it's just individual to you. But if you actually upload it online to the Power BI site, then you can actually start collaborating with other people in the team. They can view your workbooks, and it will just be much richer experience as well. And Power BI version of it allows manage individual data models as well. Now the SharePoint side, you can have tabular or multidimensional as the data model, and it's more of a centralized enterprise solution, and it would get less frequent updates, being that it's on-premise, so it's not going to get upgraded too frequently. So a number of the features are still a little bit behind in the Power View side of, or in the SharePoint side of for Power View. But it allows managed centralized data models. So that's what's good about the SharePoint. It's much more sort of enterprise corporate type of solution. I mean, the Power BI one is as well, but they're slightly different. All right, so let's just move on to the demo. I'm just going to show you the Excel version of it. Right, and let's just check. Let me just flick here quickly, making sure that my connection is all good with Power BI. Yeah, looks like it's all good. Alrighty, so let's go to Excel. So this is Excel 2013. If you haven't seen it before, this is what it looks like, and I've got a Power View sheet already created here. I just want to show you quickly what it would look like if we were to insert a new Power View. So from the ribbon, you can choose this Power View here. So just click on that, and it will automatically connect to your data model, which is Power Pivot that you have defined in this workbook. And I'll show you Power Pivot a little bit later on as well. So here from the field on the right, you can choose the different tables to get the information from. So let's just quickly do perhaps products. Let's just expand that and then go to product name, and then choose, okay, and then choose sales. Let's see, sales here. Perhaps we'll look at the sum of sales as well as revenue. So it's just a matter of just clicking on, the columns that you want to see. And obviously, by default, it gives you just this table, which is a bit tricky to consume. It's better off if we can summarize it, and perhaps we're not really interested in this, in everything that we see here. A business, for example, say it's only interested in the top 5 products, so we're in the last, say maybe in 2007, so we can start putting a filter by dragging it to the filter here, put on calendar year, and then we can just click on 2007, and then we can also filter on the top 5 products in 2007, so we can just drag the ranked product column to the filter. Let's see if it's working. Actually, I should do that on the table side of it. There we go. And maybe I'll just narrow it down a little bit more to just 5. There we go. So it should just give me 5 products. Now, even though it's just 5 different products and we're looking at just sales and revenue, it's actually hard to visualize what's going on here. But I can easily convert this into something like, say, column chart and change it to clustered column. And now we can see the proportion of the sales and revenue, for the top 5 products, and you can start adding titles and make it a little bit more a little bit more relevant. So top 5 products, just like that. And in some cases, well, if you look at this chart here, it tells you sum of sales and revenue by product name. So perhaps we don't really need the legend here, or maybe we can just show the legend and then the revenue. In fact, I would actually use the legend and just ignore the title because it's not really needed. Oh, sorry. if you remove the title, if you remove the legend, we're not really clear on which one is the sales and the revenue, so we might as well just keep the legend rather than the title. So let's just go to the layout here and just adjust a few things. So that makes it a little bit clearer. And in the legend, for the legend, I usually prefer to either put it on the top or on the bottom rather than on the side, just to maximize that space. So this is just a very simple, very simple Power View sheet here, or Power View visualization. Now I'm going to show you a bad example. Now I don't want you to do this, but I'm just showing you a bad version of what I have created earlier, because once you play around with Power View, you just want to start adding more and more visualization, and you're just like, this is so cool, I'm just going to try and put everything together, and then all of a sudden it just becomes incoherent. So I'm going to tell you why this is a bad executive dashboard, or bad dashboard in general. Alright, so if you look at the one here on the left, you can see I'm using pie chart. Pie chart is not something that I like to use just because it's usually harder to compare values. So that's number one. Number two, so that's probably my personal thing, but you might think differently. That's fine. But another important, actually the most important one out of this visualization here is I'm actually comparing sales current year to date and then against the sales current year to date goal, so the budgeted sales for the current year, and then comparing it against the sales from previous current year. So the idea about this visualization here is to compare how am I doing now, and how am I doing now, what's my budget or target is like, and what was it last year. To do this or represent this as a pie chart is like a completely wrong thing, because it's not a one unity, it's not a category or anything like that. It's they don't interrelate with one another. So that's what's bad about the pie chart. And then we'll look at this on the bottom here. We're analyzing the sales variance month on month, target growth in sales by month, which is pretty reasonable. We can see that this is what the target, the blue line is the target, and then that's how we're going from month on month in terms of growth. And then on the right here, just a quick one, it's talking about revenue, and it's by month analysis, and it's to do with territory. So already in this one dashboard, we're actually looking at about a few different things. The first one is the pie chart bit, which is the sales and how they compare to one another. So that's like two things, how they compare with sales and how they compare with one another. And then the third one is on the bottom there, we talk about the sales variance from month on month and the target growth. And then we'll look at the sales territory, and then we'll also look at the month on month sort of point of view. And then we also look at the revenue variance, which is slightly different from what we were talking about before. So it's pretty incoherent, and our brain starts tracking so many things, and then we start asking questions. How are they related to one another again? So that's what we want to stop doing. A better example of creating a visualization for this is probably to focus on one thing at a time. So for example, if you're focusing on just the sales performance, let's do that. So on the here I have one against budget. I'm actually I'll just go to the bottom one first. So instead of the pie chart, I'm actually using column chart to compare the let me just move it across a little bit more. So I'm comparing the sales amount now, and then next to it, the blue one here is the goal, which is the budget, and then what it looks like is previous current year. So now it's clear to see. I've got the numbers, I've got the comparison. It's pretty clear. And then if I look at on the top, it actually is supporting the information down the bottom, which is the sales current year-to-date status. So how are we going against our budget? And it's red. It's not good, because as you can see on the bottom, it's kind of like only halfway there. But in terms of the growth, we're actually doing quite well against the previous current year, because we're analyzing 2007 quarter 3 here, based on last year's full year, it was 6.53, but this year we're only up to Q3. We're already doing 5.78 million, so it's not too bad. And that percentage is 88.54%. So, you know, it's not duplicating information, but they supporting one another. And then on the left here, we're actually looking at the month-on-month growth by country. So this is to answer questions, the business questions, is it worthwhile expanding to another country? So let's have a look at the last 3 months, how they're going. So we have Canada here quite big, and Australia there's quite small. But if we look at August, if you click on August, Canada's still going quite strong. Australia's not as much. And then in September, if we click on that, Australia's doing better. So if I were just to show you what the snapshot looks like in September to Australia, on Australian performance here for sales performance, you might be able to make the wrong judgment here. But if you can go back and backtrack it to a few months ago, it's a lot better. It gives the management a better picture. All right, so I'll just stop right there in terms of this Excel 2013 demo. One thing that I want to remind you is it's a good idea to be able to have a coherent theme as well. So in Power View, you can actually select multiple different themes. The default is theme 1 here, which is probably not a good one to use because it's way too bright. And if you read Stephen Few's book, and in fact this color here for the theme adjacency, which is the one that I'm using here, it's actually, so it's this part here, adjacency, it's actually closer to Stephen Few's information dashboard design book. So, yeah, so the theme again is adjacency, the one that I'm using here on the screen. And you know, once I'm happy with the workbook, let me just go here, hopefully it works. Once I'm happy with the workbook, I can upload it to Power BI, which exposes it for my team, so I can view it online. I can, so it works a very similar way to Excel 2013 as well. So you can start building a story here. So from sales performance, you can look at the monthly sales and revenue and do more analysis there. So the idea is being able to build a story from it. And one other feature that I want to show you here is to do with the trend analysis that is only available on Power BI version of Power View, where you can convert this to HTML5. So I'm not going to, hopefully this will work, where you can actually perform forecasting. So it's useful for trend analysis and doing kind of like a what-if analysis. So if the revenue had gone down, would it be advisable, what would it look like, and would it be advisable to do certain things? I do apologize for the color here. It's, for some reason it picks a yellow line, but I've just highlighted in red. That pretty much highlights the forecasting for this revenue, what it's going to look like. And you can start doing what-if analysis by sort of, say, for example, dragging it down here for the revenue. Then it will change your forecasting value here as well. There. So I think it's a very cool feature. It's definitely something to give a go. Right, so we have about 15 minutes left, so I'm just going to progress on. Alright, so I discussed a little bit about theme earlier, so the theme that I used before called adjacency. I think that's a good one to start with. If you can reuse that, then that's good, but if you need to customize it for your organization, there are a few more themes that you can try giving a go. Positioning is important. I have shown you a little bit on roughly what reasonable dashboard should look like, and I've shown you the different colors, and you can see that there's a font size, a certain font size type that I'm using before. You can change that too, by the way, and you can change the font type. And it's quite important to also be able to plan for your interactivity between for your dashboard, and if you need to go to multiple dashboards, you need to be able to plan for how the user is going to interact with it. Hopefully not to hopefully for strategic type of dashboards, the users don't have to go to too many dashboards because you will lose them, you will lose their focus. So the more you present to them, the more that they will lose the focus. Now here's some composition tips, and I have to thank Jen Stirrup for presenting last week for Past BI Virtual Chapter, because she reminded me of a couple of few things that I have done in the past, but it's actually applicable for data visualization as well. All right, so composition tips. So this is actually from Stephen View. No matter what culture you're from, most of the time the left corner one is most emphasized, or the center one. So the center one is emphasized only if you have good spacing layout. But if you have a grid style, most of the time the left corner one is used the most. One of the reasons for that is because of a lot of the time we see websites on the screen, and people are just so used to reading things from the left, and because it's just like a majority rule kind of thing. So just remember, so a lot of the time, if you can, avoid putting logo on the left, but put the more important information on the left top one. So this is one that I created earlier, sales performance, and now this is something that I learned from photography, which is the Fibonacci sequence, which can be also related to rule of thirds. And the interesting thing about this is you have the tendency, in terms of composition, you have the tendency of drawing focus on this sort of corner here. Let me see if I could focus it. There you go. So a lot of the time the focus will be related around this area here. So it's something to think about. I'm not saying that it will solve everything by using Fibonacci sequence, but it's just sometimes the way the eyes work or visual work. Again, it's your own discretion. Use it if you can. It doesn't have to solve every single dashboard. It doesn't have to fit in this way, but it's just something to think about. All right, let's just quickly go to the data model. So the data model for Excel 2013 is Power Pivot. So here I'm actually connecting to SQL Server 2012 SQL Server database, and I just imported the relevant information, for example, internet sales here. But after I import it, I actually do quite a bit of customization, for example, hiding the columns that the users don't need to see, just to enable better experience. And then I also add a couple of calculated columns as necessary, and then on top of that I also add a few things like measures that would be relevant for the users. So for example, management usually want to do comparison against last month, or the growth against last month or last year, and then against a budget. So you'll need to enrich your data model to be able to support that. And if you are not aware of this website, this is a gold mine, seriously. You have to go to this website. It's called DAX Patterns. So if you are looking at enriching your data model to fit different types of scenarios that users, or management would want to use, most of the time those questions will already be answered in this DAX pattern. So go through it, read it, understand it, learn it, and master it, and then you'll be all good with your data model. Another website that I want to highlight here is called Power Pivot Pro. It has a lot of good tips around Power Pivot as well. So go there. While I remember, this is actually a Stephen View's blog or article around data visualization for human perception. That's an interesting read. Okay, so so that's the data model. So in Power Pivot, you can format your data, for example, the date format and things like that, and you can specify data types, and you can also perform things like categorizing data. If you have address and all that stuff, it's worthwhile categorizing the data. And setting table behavior is important too for let me just go to sales territory here. The table behavior is quite important to set for Power View as well. So you can say specify row identifier, and then provide default image and things like that. Essentially, once you format that properly, it would allow you to embed image in your dashboards like this. Hopefully it will show up. like this one here. So that's the image. It actually comes from SQL Server, by the way. All right, so that's that. Let's move on. All right, so just to summarize in terms of tips, I'd like you to know that this is just a short list of some tips around preparing Power Pivot or Tabular for Power View. So you want to make sure that you have default aggregation where possible. Like for example, sometimes Power Pivot by default just some things, but certain measure, for example, age is not worth adding up or summing up, but it's more worthwhile averaging. So you can categorize that. Then there's also time intelligence calculations that is documented really well in DAX patterns. So I would like to thank Marco Russo and Alberto Ferrari for doing that. That's awesome to come up with patterns for time intelligence. And you can also do or create a measure called top X products or top N products for customers or other categories, and that's probably quite interesting analysis for the management. I think Casper de Jong actually did a blog on this, so it's something quite good to have a look at. You can also configure KPIs. I haven't actually shown you today, but you can configure KPI and show that on Power View. It's important to hide unwanted columns because otherwise it's hard for the users or creator of data visualization using Power View to actually pick the columns, the necessary columns. And if management is expected to create their own Power View, it's going to be a bit tricky. And it's also important to add this sort of variance type of measure rather than just the actual sales or rather than the actual amount, for example, sales amount. So you want to be able to offer sales amount as well as sales variance or growth, because those two actually are quite useful for management to analyze how the business is tracking. So I think I just want to wrap up quickly here so that we can allow some time for Q&A. So this is just a bit of a checklist. You want to make sure that your dashboard, in terms of delivering it, you want to make sure that you can actually offer small, concise, clean, and intuitive display mechanisms, also customizable, specific to requirements, and I think Power View fits quite nicely here. And in terms of the design checklist, so before you hand that dashboard over to the management, just have a look through, see if your dashboard actually serves the purpose of summarizing, identifying patterns, highlighting anomalies, suggesting reasons of why things have happened in certain ways, and guiding for effective decisions. So if you're not sure, ask your other colleague, and again, if you're not sure, if you can come up with the likely questions that management want to get answered by viewing your dashboards. In fact, before you start, it's probably the best thing to do to go to the management and say, hey, what are the questions that you want to get answered? And you want to make sure that the information can fit on a single screen, so you don't have to scroll up and down because it's really hard to see. But if you can break them down into coherent chunks, you can actually divide a specific dashboard, for example, says performance on one dashboard and then the monthly growth or whatever it is, maybe on the second dashboard. That way you don't cram too much information on one screen. You want to be able to make sure that your dashboard can be monitored at a glance. So this is where it's quite important if you start thinking about offering your dashboard for mobile sort of resolution. So if it's going to fit on mobile phone, then start thinking about how much information can you fit in there, and then is it readable? Because once you start putting, say for example, 3 different charts in there, it's going to be hard for the users to analyze using mobile phone. So ask around how is the dashboard going to be consumed. If it's mostly going to be consumed on mobile phone, then do that. Make sure that it actually is readable on mobile phone. And if it is intended to be viewed on tablet or PC with kind of higher resolution, then design it appropriately as well. Use space very, very wisely there. And also another important thing is to be able to deliver this dashboard timely enough for strategic, analytical, or operational purposes. And just remember that you have data. It's unorganized, so it's just like egg and flour, and then you can turn this into information, yummy information, and then you can present it in such a way that is nice and consumed and quite nicely, just like knowledge. So the end of the end game is pretty much to be able to share the knowledge using your dashboard. So do it the best you can using the medium that is available to you and in a way, in the right design or visualization format. So just remember that. And these are some references. I'm just going to be putting these references out on my blog, which is misssqlgirl.com or mssqlgirl.com. And yeah, and I'm hoping that you would have the time to review these websites or books so that you can take the most out of understanding design components, business components, and technical components to really serve good data visualization for your business. So I'd like to open for questions. We have a few minutes left. Catherine, are you there?
I am. We do have a couple of questions, and with only a couple of minutes left, I don't think we will have time to answer all of them. But you will create a blog post where you can answer some of these questions, right?
Yes, that's right, yeah. So I will follow up the answers on my blog.
Yeah. We have one question here from Mark Broadbent. What single killer feature do you think is currently missing from the Microsoft visualization stack?
Good question there. One thing that I find missing is the I forgot the name of it. So the bullet charts. I think it's missing quite a bit because it gives you more. If you haven't seen it before, just Google that bullet chart. Yeah, I think that's what's missing. I could go on and on about it, but I thought I'll just cut it short right now.
Yeah, and you will be presenting at PASS Summit, which is an extended version of this session.
That's right, yeah.
So if people are going, make sure you attend Julie's session there for even more visualization tips on how to do it. I actually don't think we have time for any more questions now.
Okay, no worries.
PASS will post the video on 24hoursofpass.com after we're finished, and Julie will post a blog post with the questions and all the links and references. Thank you to everyone who's attended today, and especially thank you to Julie. It was a great session.
Thank you so much. Thanks everyone for attending, and don't forget to follow up the next session on Agile Data Warehousing start to finish with David and Maury. And don't forget to use the code for getting savings for the registration. All right, so hopefully see you next time, maybe at PASS Summit, and have a great one, guys. Thanks, Catherine, for moderating.
Thank you. Bye.